Andy Ross is your project manager from the planning division for the overall project. And Tricia Pontow from our team will be managing the housing element update, which is another important part of this. And your consultant team joining us with Joanna Jansen, who's a principal at PlaceWorks, and Carrie Stone, who is a senior associate at PlaceWorks, have lots of experience doing general plan updates across the state. They're one of their founding partners of the firm has written a textbook called The General Plan in California. It serves as a sort of upper division curriculum at most planning schools and certificate programs. So we feel like we're in great hands in partnership with them, and with the participation of you, we're excited for the outcome of this a couple of years from now. So without further ado, I'll turn it back over to your team, and thanks again for joining us this evening.
Great, thank you so much, Steve. Everybody bear with me for one moment while I share my screen and give us a presentation this evening.
Joanna.
Oh yes, thank you, Marina. Thank you for reminding me before I jump into that. I really appreciate it. Marina, please make an announcement for us regarding Spanish interpretation.
Ok, para las personas que necesitan interpretación al español, en un momentito va a aparecer un globito en la parte de abajo a la derecha de su pantalla. Háganle clic a ese globito que se llama interpretación. Entonces, una vez que le hacen clic, ahí pueden elegir español y van a escuchar la presentación en español. Okay, go ahead, please.
Great, thank you so much, Marina. I appreciate that. So Marina has let us know that there is Spanish translation being provided at this workshop. And as going along with that, I also just want to reiterate the welcome that Steve Stewart gave you. He's the planning manager of the city. As he said, my name is Joanna Jansen. I am a principal at a consulting firm called PlaceWorks, and I advise cities and counties, in the Bay Area and the Central Valley and Northern California on their general plan updates. And I'm joined tonight by my very talented and hardworking PlaceWorks colleagues, Carrie, Cliff, Tarina, Ricky, Wesley, and Allison. We're all here to support you tonight, and we're very grateful to each of you for taking the time to join us. And we want to start off by making sure that you feel welcomed and respected and encouraged and excited about being part of this important process. So tonight, I'm going to give you about a 15-minute presentation explaining what Imagine Livermore 2045 is. Then we're going to have time for your questions. And after we are all grounded in a shared understanding of the project, we're going to do a quick real-time polling to start hearing from you. And then the majority of our time tonight is really going to be spent listening to you and to each other in small group breakout rooms. We have about an hour for that tonight. After those conversations, we're going to come back together in this large group and hear from each other about those small group discussions, and then wrap up with next steps. We want to be respectful of your time, and so we are going to be doing everything we can to keep things on schedule for a meeting close around 8:30 tonight. As I just mentioned, we do have time for your questions tonight, and so I definitely encourage you to listen to the presentation. We've tried to put this together in order to answer what we encounter as the most common questions about general plans and general plan updates, but we know you're going to have questions. So when you have questions, whether it's during the presentation or during the question and answer period, please submit those through the chat. What you're going to do is use the buttons at the bottom of your screen and find the find the white chat button. It looks kind of like a little speech button. Click on that and then choose project questions. Carrie, that's Carrie Stone. She's our project manager, and she's going to be making sure that she's collecting all of the questions so we don't miss any. So please send them to project questions. And she'll capture them, and then you can type your message and hit enter, and it will be on its way to Carrie and will give you an answer. So with that, let's dive in. You saw this logo on the agenda slide a couple of slides ago, the light bulb with the icon with the people and the tree and the arts and the buildings. This is our Imagine Livermore 2045 logo. And I hope that you'll start to notice it more and more around town after tonight. Imagine Livermore 2045 is the name that we've given to the city's general plan update process. And I'm going to explain what a general plan is, but I actually want to start with why it's important. Livermore that you experience today is in part the result of decisions about planning and development and conservation that were made almost 20 years ago, a generation ago, when the city adopted its current general plan, like Steve mentioned. So the homes, parks, streets, shops, landscapes, what we see and know about Livermore today, whether we like it or wish it was different, is all powerfully influenced by the general plan that's in place right now. And so this general plan update is important because it's your chance to imagine what Livermore will be like in 2045 and to have a say in what people feel and experience in Livermore a generation from now. So that's why the general plan is important, but I want to also explain to you a little bit more about what the general plan is. Every city and county in California has to have a general plan to guide land use and development and plan for how that city is going to grow in a balanced way while also conserving and protecting important resources like air and water and open spaces. The general plan is the place where we establish the community's vision for the physical form of the city, how it's going to look and feel, how it all fits together. And it sets out those policies and regulations so that they can be applied fairly and consistently across all city decisions. And as I've mentioned, most general plans look out about 20 to 25 years in the future. So the current general plan, which is pictured on the right, was adopted back in early 2004, and it had a planning horizon of the year 2025. So we're starting now looking ahead to that horizon so that we'll have an updated plan in place that will meet the needs of 2025 and then look out to 2045. The general plan is made up of chapters, or what the law calls elements. Several of these elements are required by California state law. So the required elements on the left are land use, circulation, which means in this case, transportation really, housing, open space and conservation, noise and safety, and then a new requirement for environmental justice in communities where this is an issue. In addition to that, cities can add any optional elements that are relevant and appropriate for their specific community. So in Livermore, you do have some optional elements in the general plan today that include community character, which is really about the urban design of Livermore, infrastructure and public services, economic development, and climate change, which is one of the more recent parts that was added. And so again, as I mentioned, the current general plan was last extensively updated back in early 2004. So this is a very important and timely update. In terms of geography, the general plan covers the city limits of Livermore. That's the area where the city has jurisdiction and can make decisions. But it also covers a little bit of land outside of the city limits and inside the urban growth boundary or inside the sphere of influence. So the city limits on this map are the dark solid gray line. The urban growth boundary is the turquoise dashed line, and then the sphere of influence line is this burgundy dashed line. So that doesn't go very far, but extends a little bit out beyond city limits, just to indicate that what happens in this land, which is in Alameda County and is controlled by Alameda County, is very close to Livermore and certainly can have an effect on Livermore. So we want to take a look at that in the general plan too, to be clear about what the city envisions for that area. These are the major steps in updating the general plan. Right now, we're at the very beginning of this process, and we're starting with the vision statement and guiding principles. These will shape the plan and its implementation, and that's what we're here to focus on tonight. But I want to fit that into the overall arc of the project. We're also in the process of preparing a series of reports to document and understand existing environmental and economic conditions in Livermore. We call these the existing conditions reports. And those are going to be shared with the public when they're ready later this year. Based on what we learn and hear from the community in these early tasks, we're then going to be exploring different land use alternatives that are different scenarios for how and where Livermore might change or stay the same over the next 20 years. And we'll update the policies and actions in the current general plan and draft new ones based on what we hear from the community. And at the same time, we're going to be preparing the city's housing element. You saw a couple of slides ago that is one of the legally required chapters or elements of the general plan, and it addresses housing supply and affordability in Livermore. It is subject to very strict state guidelines and deadlines, so it's being prepared on a separate parallel schedule that's going to move a little bit in advance of the rest of the general plan update. And then ultimately, we'll pull all of these pieces together into a draft general plan and an environmental impact report, usually called an EIR, that looks at the potential impacts of the draft general plan on the physical environment. And that both of those documents will undergo extensive circulation and discussion with the community. Here's a very simplified schedule of all of that work. We expect this to take about the next 2.5 years, with the updated general plan being adopted in the spring of 2024. And I want to point out on this slide, this top bar, which is community engagement. So you can see that that goes all the way across the entire process. So throughout the next 2.5 years, your voice and the voices of all Livermore residents will be vitally important to us to make sure that this plan reflects Livermore and is supported by the community. And to achieve that, we're going to be creating a lot of different opportunities for you and others to be involved throughout the process. We're going to be going where people are at community events. We've already started doing this at the farmers market a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to do it again this Saturday at the Latinx Hispanic Heritage Month celebration at the Civic Center Library. So I hope that you can join us there. And keep an eye out for us around town at other events. We're also going to have workshops like this one intermittently throughout the process when we want to get in-depth input at important milestones. And we're going to be having a general plan advisory committee made up of Livermore citizens that I will talk about more in just a couple slides. And of course, throughout this process, we're going to be having regular updates with the Planning Commission and the City Council at their public hearings. And we also want to offer you online activities so that you have a chance to submit your comments, get in touch with us, let us know what you think at any time based on what's convenient for you. As all of us are only too aware right now, we are still dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic and various public health measures that are put in place to protect us. So the ability of these events to happen in person versus virtually is probably going to evolve over time based on that situation. We know that many people don't know what the general plan is, don't know that it exists, don't understand why it's important, don't understand how they can make a difference. And so we're really going to be making an extra effort to reach people who don't usually get involved in city projects like this by connecting with community leaders who can put us in touch through their trusted relationships with people in the community, by translating outreach materials into different languages and offering interpretation at events like tonight's workshop. Meeting people where they are in the community, like I already talked about. And we are partnering with the local school district to get in touch with parents and families through their networks. We also have launched a website, imaginelivermore2045.org. And we want this website to be a really useful tool for you where you can easily find information on meeting dates and materials and online surveys and public documents as those get published. So please bookmark imaginelivermore2045.org and keep track of us there. We actually have an exercise that's live online right now already, and it's going to be up through October 3rd. It's a quick and easy way for you to let us know what you like about Livermore today, what your vision is for Livermore 2045, the guiding principles that are important to you, and what issues the general plan should address. And we're actually going to have a chance for you to do something, a version of this exercise in real time with us in just a few minutes. So going back to the General Plan Advisory Committee, or GPAC, the city is forming a GPAC of Livermore citizens. And I think some of you are here tonight because you've applied to serve in that important role. So thank you very much for your interest and willingness to share your time and energy with us. That group is going to meet more or less monthly over the next 2 years to review our work and provide feedback to us, help us connect with the community and represent the views of Livermore citizens. Every GPAC meeting is a public meeting and includes time for public comment on the agenda. So that's a very important piece of the process for us. So with that overview of the process as a whole, let's turn to our focus for tonight, which is gathering your thoughts on a vision statement for the general plan. The vision and the guiding principles that support it will influence both our work on the general plan and also how that general plan gets translated into reality after it's adopted and going forward. So it really needs to express shared community values, and it needs to be unique to Livermore. And of course, it also needs to be relevant to the topics that we cover in the general plan. So let me just give you a couple of examples of a vision statement. There's no rules about what the vision statement has to be or what it can't be. Most important is that it reflects Livermore. So I've seen some vision statements that are one sentence. I've seen some that are several pages long. This can be, what you want it to be. Each one is crafted to fit its community. But just to get you thinking, I wanted to share a couple of examples. This is one from Calistoga, and I like this one from Calistoga because while it has a couple sentences that are relatively generic that many cities would probably agree with, like Calistoga will remain a community in which its residents can take pride. This one also has a lot of, without going into too much detail, it manages to be very specific to Calistoga. It talks about wineries, it talks about health spas, it talks about the Napa River, it talks about historic architecture. So that makes it really specific to Calistoga, and it gives you a great sense of what people in Calistoga think is important. It also mentions not only the physical environment, but also the social and economic fabric of Calistoga. So those are some of the reasons why I thought it might be a good example to share. And this is an example from San Mateo and their general plan update process. It shows how a vision statement can be supported by guiding principles. In San Mateo's case, they decided to keep it really short and sweet with a one-sentence vision statement. It says, San Mateo is a vibrant, livable, diverse, and healthy community that respects the quality of its neighborhoods, fosters a flourishing economy, is committed to equity, and is a leader in environmental sustainability. But they couldn't quite get everything they wanted to say in one sentence, so they also want to support this vision statement with values and go into a little bit more depth about each one of the values. So for San Mateo, they chose values of diversity, balance, inclusivity, prosperity, and resiliency that are all closely related to their vision. The process for creating this vision statement, we want to get lots and lots of communities and input and voices into this. I mentioned that we've already been to 2 pop-up community events at the Farmers Market and at the Maryland Avenue Food Pantry earlier in September. We're here tonight with you for this virtual workshop. On Saturday, we're going to be having our open house event, as I mentioned, at the Civic Center Library, partnering with their Latinx Heritage Month event there from 12 to 3, and online activities that are live now through early October. At this point, we also have a community-wide survey that's going on. There is a survey firm that's currently conducting random surveys with a randomly selected sample of residents to ask them some questions that are relevant to the general plan and to this vision statement process. We're going to take all of that input and draft a vision and guiding principles and take that to the GPAC, or General Plan Advisory Committee, for their review in October, then to the Planning Commission in November, and the City Council in December. So with that, we have reached the part of the meeting where we want to take some time to answer your questions. And so again, just a reminder, we're asking you to please use the chat function, use the buttons at the bottom of your screen. There's one that says chat, find project questions Carrie, and click on her name, and then type your message in the box and hit enter, and we'll get it and do our best to answer it for you. So Carrie, any questions to share so far?
Yes, I have a few. I got a couple questions about whether the PowerPoint would be available soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever we do these meetings, we're going to be sharing the PowerPoint on the website, imaginelivermore2045.org. So you will always be able to find the PowerPoints there.
Next question was, does the general plan encompass the LARPD owned campground in South Lake Tahoe?
In South Lake Tahoe?
Correct.
No, it does not.
There was a comment that there wasn't great notification about this meeting, and the press release listed it as the only direct meeting that was pre-scheduled. How can this be considered a representative solicitation of input from residents?
Yeah, I totally hear you. We are, again, in the very early days of this process. We're still building our mailing list, which I hope all of you are on now, and building our capacity at the city to both use the city's traditional outreach channels and also to increase and strengthen our partnerships with the school district and with other community-based organizations to get the word out. So we're going to continue to have a broader and broader outreach for this first meeting. We're definitely not up to the level yet that we hope and intend to achieve. But that's why we're going to continue to have events throughout other channels like the open house at the library this Saturday, and also why we're leaving the online exercises up through October 3rd, so that folks have plenty of different opportunities to give input if they didn't know about tonight's meeting or weren't able to be here.
The next question was, there was a time when logos representing the city and its interests included symbols of agricultural heritage, often a horse and grapes. I was unable to note any agriculture components to the logo. Is the logo adapted? Were agricultural symbols considered?
The logo is, intended to represent some, but certainly not all of the things that are important to Livermore and in Livermore. So I'd say that from that comment, it sounds like agriculture is something that's really important to this person as a part of Livermore's heritage and present day environment and economy. So that's exactly the kind of thing that we want to hear from you tonight, both in the interactive polling we're going to do and also in your small groups, to hear a little bit more about what you see as the importance of agriculture in Livermore, both now and in the future.
Will this plan supersede the South Livermore plan?
No, the general plan is separate from the South Livermore plan. So the general plan is a really important document, but it by no means is it the only planning document that the city has. There are other documents guiding specific parts of Livermore, and there's other documents that guide topics like infrastructure planning or streets and roadways. So the general plan doesn't replace any of these documents, but works in tandem with them.
There was a question for someone to speak louder. I don't know if it's me or you, Joanna, so I'll try and speak louder. But where is the link to the online involvement?
The online involvement? Okay, so right now, if you want to see online involvement, you can go to imaginelivermore2045.org. And if you wait just a few minutes in this meeting, we're going to give you a QR code and a web link where you can do real-time interactive involvement with us.
There's a question about the cost of the PlaceWorks contract.
Sure, I will be happy to let city staff take that.
Sure. So council authorized a contract with PlaceWorks for a 2.5-year endeavor, and the estimated value of that is to over $2.5 million, just over.
There was a question about is it possible to add another element to the general plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. The organization of the general plan certainly can be flexible depending on the specific needs of the jurisdiction. So the slide that I showed you had the list of the required elements and the optional elements, but it is allowed under state law for the city to combine or organize those elements in whatever way is the best fit for Livermore. So what we've heard so far from staff is that the organization of the general plan as it stands today is working pretty well. But we're certainly open to hearing comments and input about how that organization might change to make the plan better.
Request that city staff add their last names to the Zoom name. And those are all the questions I have so far.
Great, thank you. So thanks for that request. We deliberately all use just our first names here to indicate how warm and friendly we are, but I can understand as citizens how you might want to know who you're speaking with and how to get in touch with them. So thanks for that comment. Any other questions we can address right now before we move on to the audience polling?
Just got one more. Is there a draft vision statement?
There's not a draft vision statement. We haven't written a single word yet because we want to hear from you, and we're not done hearing from you yet. We haven't even barely started hearing from you. So we don't have a draft yet. When we do have a draft, we're going to be posting it on the website at imagine2045.org. We're going to be taking it to the GPAC so they can look at it in a public meeting. And we're going to be taking it to the Planning Commission and the Council so that they can look at it in public meetings. So I hope that you will definitely know when there is a draft. And I hope that your words here tonight, you can see them reflected in that draft when we have it. Okay. All right, well, so if there's no other questions right now, then we're gonna take a second and hear your ideas with a little bit of audience polling. And I believe what's gonna happen right now is that Cliff is gonna share his screen. And so what you can see, we want to hear your ideas. And if we go, Cliff, to the next screen, what we have here for you are two ways to access this polling tool. So this polling tool is an online exercise. You can use the URL that's there, and also that's going to be posted into the chat for this meeting. Or you can use the camera on your smartphone to hold it up and take a picture of that square black and white box. That's a QR code that'll take you to the poll. So two ways: use the link, click on the link in the chat, or hold up your camera to join via the QR code. And that should take you to a website that looks that has some different questions that we're going to ask you. So I think, Cliff, we've probably given folks enough time to use the QR code, and they have the link in the chat if they need it. So let's go ahead and open the website when you're able. So you should be seeing a site that looks something like this, and you can access this on a laptop like Cliff is doing, or you can access it with your smartphone. Either way, it will look a little bit different on the smartphone than it looks on this screen. But we've got 4 questions here for you, and they're represented by these 4 different colored boxes. And you can answer any, all, some or none of these questions, whatever you feel most interested in. The first question, the blue one, is what do you like about Livermore today? What's working well? What do we want to support and encourage and increase through the general plan update? The second question with the orange light bulb is about your vision for Livermore in 2045. Think 20 years in the future. What do you, if you fell asleep today and woke up in the Livermore of 2045, what do you want to see when you walk out your door? What should be part of the community that's not here today? What should be changed that is here today? So your vision for 2045, that's the orange box. The green question, and please feel free to go ahead and start answering these. We're going to start showing your answers in just a second. The green box is about the guiding principles. So these might be your ideas or values that you think that should guide and shape the general plan process as a whole and its implementation, and just add a little bit more depth and specificity to the vision. And then finally, issues, the red box at the end. These are like things that bug you today, problems that we really need to tackle through the general plan update, things that aren't working as well as they should, what needs to be improved and addressed and changed, within the purview of what the general plan addresses. Think about those topics that we saw on the list of the elements of the general plan. So as the results start to come in, you can see the first one here already about I like open space and Livermore's vibrant downtown. So that's great input. And I think that's something that many of us can relate to and something that we hear a lot when we talk to people about what they like about Livermore. Just keep them coming in. We're going to use all of these to shape our input tonight. And this is just kind of a warm-up exercise. Again, you're welcome to participate. You're not required to fill anything in right here. You can just watch and see what your neighbors and other workshop participants have to say. I like our small and family-owned businesses. I like hiking and outdoor space, friendly low-key wine destinations. Again, a mention of downtown and especially downtown events. I love Livermore's small town feel, but also the new restaurants and shops and space to steps to create a more inclusive city. So I feel like I can already see some themes emerging, and this is a great example. You can write 4 words or you can write a whole paragraph, whatever moves you. I also please feel free to get warmed up with what you like, and then also think about some other things that might be issues, like we can see here starting to show up, keeping the community safe from crime and gang activity, and a concern about infrastructure not keeping up with development growth. Other people like the arts. People like that Livermore has lots of different types of activities. People appreciate Livermore's small business district and the ways the city has addressed the COVID pandemic, and want to see a continued diversifying economy. Livermore feels like a great alternative to cities like Oakland and Berkeley and San Francisco. And again, a couple of mentions of diversity starting to crop up here. Here's an orange vision for Livermore in 2045 that is a vibrant and inclusive community. These are great. This is awesome. Thank you. Another vision of a place that is an alternative to what people see as the typical Bay Area community. Another mention of open space. So several people bringing up downtown, bringing up small businesses, bringing up open space, bringing up a feeling of friendliness and community. All right, great. You guys are doing fantastic. So more visions for 2045, maintain the small town vibe, retain open areas and parks and trails. A Livermore in 2045 that's safe, inclusive, welcoming, interconnected, interdependent. Livermore that continues to have a vibrant arts community and makes the arts and sciences part of daily life for everyone. A Livermore in 2045 with open space and a vibrant downtown, and increasing housing, concentrated downtown to stimulate retail and restaurants and create a live, work, play downtown. Here's another issue being raised about public transport and the need for more bus stops, and so that people don't have to walk as far to get to the bus. And a concern that Livermore is becoming a bedroom community, and that we need a process that's going to address strong differing viewpoints. I totally agree. Some guiding principles are being suggested. Let me just show you the filtering feature. And again, this is this same website, a version of this exercise is online right now. So if you visit it later, or you have refer to friends and family, you can always filter by the specific responses. Can you show us just the guiding principles, Cliff? I think there's 2 that I've seen so far. Oh, we might have gotten another one. Great. So guiding principles that are being brainstormed so far include cultural arts as part of the art community, equity, and maintaining a small town feel that welcomes all. Let's take just a couple more minutes. I feel like people are really have a great momentum. And this, part of what we want to do here is give you a chance to start thinking about your answers to these questions, and also give you a chance to see what other people who are participating think is important and think needs to be addressed. So concerns about teens gathering downtown and tagging around the bankhead, people who want Livermore to continue to maintain a small town feel, but have the amenities of a big city. That's the vision for 2045. What I like about Livermore is access to elected and professional officials, and the small town feeling that Livermore has had, and that there's open space around Livermore, that Livermore has traditionally been a safe and friendly town, and that there's public parks for people to enjoy, and traditions like the rodeo that really set Livermore apart. So I think that connects back to what we heard other people say too about the importance of community events. This word welcoming really crops up over and over again: safe, friendly, clean. I think we've seen all of those in other comments as well. The energy is wonderful downtown. People like outdoor dining. Some new guiding principles are being suggested: maintain a safe and inclusive, family-friendly community. This word about inclusive is coming up several times. Livermore will continue to be focused on maintaining the quality of life for its residents. And if you talk about that in your small group in a few minutes, I would love to hear more from you about what quality of life means for you and what the most important elements of Livermore's quality of life are. So a vision for safe human scale corridors for getting around through town, and dynamic elements that in downtown that change with the seasons, and where you can be around other people in a positive place. This is fantastic. I really appreciate all of these ideas and this input. I know we don't have time to read every one of them, but I think we're getting a really good sense of the breadth of perspectives that are here tonight. And this is all excellent input for us. And I want you to have more time to talk about it in a little bit more depth and hear from each other in your small groups. So with that, let's go ahead and stop your screen share, Cliff, and let me thank all of you. Again, if you want more time with that exercise, the same thing is online right now. It's a different version, so we created a version special for tonight so that you could start with a blank slate, but we're going to be incorporating both the input from tonight and from the workshop, from the website, into our work on the vision statement going forward. So with that, let me just give you a quick overview of what we're going to be doing for most of the rest of tonight in our small group discussions. And I will advance the slide. We have about an hour for these discussions. You're going to be joined by a facilitator and who's going to help keep the conversation moving, and a note taker who's going to be recording your comments, so we make sure we're capturing your input. Those folks are going to be from either the city or from PlaceWorks. Everybody in the small group, including the facilitator and the note taker, should take the first few minutes to introduce yourselves. And then the majority of your time to go through in a little bit more depth the questions that we just started thinking about in the audience poll. So what did you see in that poll that you really agreed with and that resonated with you? Did you see anything that you feel differently about? Just take a few minutes to kind of reflect on that. And then we're asking you to spend most of your time talking about three things: your vision for Livermore in 2045, the guiding principles that are important to guide the general plan update and decisions about Livermore's future, and then the key issues that the general plan should address. And we kind of have these structured as three separate questions, but we understand that sometimes the line between these topics can be a little bit blurry, and something might be both a vision and a guiding principle, or something that you see as an issue might easily be kind of flipped to become part of your vision. So we're framing it with these three questions, but don't feel constrained by those. Just make sure that your conversation is flowing and everyone's having a chance to be heard and speak. Then at the last 5 minutes of your small group, we're going to ask you to wrap up. Each small group will appoint a spokesperson. That should be someone from the community, not a city staff person or a PlaceWorks person. Pick someone in your group from the Livermore community to give us kind of a brief summary of what your group discussed and some of the highlights. We won't have time to hear everything, but we want like a 1 to 2 minute summary of what you talked about. So in just a couple of minutes, you're going to see Tarina is going to put you all in small groups, and you're going to see a little box pop up on your screen to join your small group. When you get there, remember to unmute yourself so that you can be heard, and remember to unmute yourself on both your phone and your computer if you're using both to call in tonight. Again, mention that a spokesperson is going to report back, let us know what was the common ground, and if there was any areas of disagreement, that's perfectly fine. We've already seen a comment on our polling tool that there's some strong differences of opinion in the Livermore community. We understand that, and we understand that that might be part of your conversation tonight, so that's okay. We know that you might have different points of view. Just record what those points of view are so that we make sure we're capturing everything. And there will be a small group in Spanish. If there are folks who want to be in the Spanish language small group, you'll be facilitated by Ricky and Marina. So I think with that, let me make sure I'm not missing anything about the Spanish language. No, I think we're good. Okay, so with that, I think it's time to break into the small groups, and I hope you all have a great discussion. Did I miss anything?
Sorry for that cutoff, Asa, but thank you.
All right, Tarina, it looks like our rooms are closed now and we're back together in the large group. All right, thank you so much, everybody. I know for some of you that might have been an abrupt end to the conversation, so I apologize. That's one of the downsides of the virtual meeting format. But thank you all so much for your discussions. Right now, we're gonna hear each one of your groups report back on what you talked about. So we're just gonna go down the list. We have 5 groups. So if you could each report back in about 2 minutes. Obviously, that's not enough time to reiterate everything that you said, but hit the high points for us, especially if there was anything that your group really strongly agreed on, or anything that was a difference of opinion where you want to tell us both sides of the story. So we're going to start with group 1, and we'll just go in order. So the group 1 spokesperson can unmute themselves, and then you can go ahead and give us your report back. So group 1, who should we be hearing
It's me,
from?
Asa.
Okay, fantastic. Take it away, Asa. Thank you.
Yeah, so under 2 minutes, I don't know if we have time to go through every single question that we did because it was quite a a lot of discussion that we had. And it was a lot of fun having this talk, but it really, we can break it down. It's really, our group was really focused around maintaining our community character, but then also growing our community character. And that's, what we have today, maintaining the small town feel. We're almost 90,000 people, but we still feel like a small town. Maintaining that, but then as we become, everyone talked about becoming or maintaining or having one of our priorities be being a diverse and inclusive city and being welcoming. And as we bring in more individuals, maintaining our small town feel as we continue to grow. We also talked about making sure that we are still welcoming. So as our city grows, not feeling like we're shutting the door behind them. Leaning, one of the things that we talked about right there at the top was leaning in on what we do well and working on the things that we don't. And so things that we do well is our community. We have 90,000 people, but it still feels like everybody knows each other, or they went to high school with each other to some degree, or their parents worked with each other. Working on being together, but then also, so I'm going to read through these a little bit. Working on being a sustainable city was also when we talked about, was a theme throughout. And being sustainable isn't just like, hey, like turn your water off at night. It's like being self-sufficient, or when we build housing, like making sure that the housing itself is sustainable. So changing the kind of practices we have around, maybe advocating for solar install on all new construction, or, water reclamation projects be put in there. So we're not, because, we're in another drought, and being sustainable in that way. But then also we talked about sustainability in terms of, as the city grows, making sure that we can move around the town easy, not relying on cars. So looking at public transportation options, making things easier for bikes, making it more bike friendly. We mentioned 4th Street and East Avenue being not really safe streets to kind of cross, because they're almost like highways through town. And making sustainability in terms of like maybe having like micro buses in certain areas of town, so people who have mobility issues don't have to rely on wheels, which is great to travel across the entire town, but maybe they just want to travel with a shorter distance in this one specific area that wheels doesn't quite service. We also, everyone mentioned housing, and it's going to be extremely important that our housing element as we go forward is a diverse housing element, not just in terms of what is being built, like single family apartments or townhomes, but like it's the who of the housing. So low income, middle income, and high income, making sure that we are building housing for all groups, so that no one group is either pushed out completely, which is typically those who just can't quite afford to live in a certain area will get priced out by those who have the money to push them out. But then to also like, in terms of age demographics or race demographics, like making sure that we are, it's illegal in some cases to do some of these, but we want to make sure that we are not creating communities where, like, if you're an older individual, this is where you live, and if you're younger, you live over here, like creating like diverse neighborhood communities, and so that people feel, their positive experiences come from people of all demographics. And then really quickly, I think when we talked about some of the issues that we had, I know we only have 2 minutes, issues that we wanted to maintain was, housing and homelessness, making sure Livermore stays a safe community over the next 20 years, preserving the open space that we do have, and maybe expanding upon some of the open space opportunities, like in South Livermore down by the old quarry lakes, and converting those into park spaces. Sustainability, creating places that, it says creating places for a diverse community to simply exist without feeling like they're going to, like, oh, we're going downtown to go shopping. It's like, we're just going to this park to exist, right? And spend time with the community, like community spaces. And then, also, which was, honoring our heritage as we do grow over the next 20 years, but then also making sure that we are inclusive of everyone else that comes in, and bringing their experiences and their, their culture and heritage, and then bring it into Livermore as well, and not feeling like Livermore is only a cow town or only a lab town. As we grow and expand, Livermore has the opportunity to be known for a lot of things, not just what we were founded upon or anchored to.
Right.
And that's the 2-minute warning.
Excellent job, Asa. Thank you very much. I think that was a great summary. And for those of you in the other groups, my guess from what I overheard and listening in is that you probably heard some of the same things that your group talked about. So that's great. We love to see commonalities emerge, and we also love to see original ideas pop up among the groups. So let's hear from group number 2. Group number 2, who's your spokesperson?
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. I'm
Oh,
a
you don't
note
have to share
taker.
yours, Allison. You can, Tarina's got it here.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, we just need your spokesperson. Is that Alan?
Yeah.
Great,
So-
go ahead, Alan.
So as Joanna suggested, we talked about a lot of the same things. There's, and I think the point, the overarching is that we all like Livermore and we want it to maintain a lot of its character. And so the question is how to grow and maintain that to be able to provide opportunities for all. We talked about trying to maintain job employment balances so that people do not have to commute. Obviously, some people will commute. We talked also about the mandates for housing. Trish talked about 4,500 housing units that need to be built in the next 7 years, for example. And how do those get integrated into the town in terms of consuming open space or being infill in terms of mother-in-law units or expanding there. And when we talked about the infill, we talked about making sure that the city is planned for all the appropriate infrastructure to accommodate these kinds of developments, sewer, electric, whatever it is. And water, we talked a little bit about concern about the availability of water. And another thing we talked about was the connection to open space. We all like the urban boundary, being surrounded by by rural areas. And so what can we do to make sure that the parks around us remain viable? There was a discussion of whether or not Livermore should contribute to the purchase of the N3 Ranch, which is a proposed major park watershed up above Del Val, 50,000 acres. And let me see. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, we talked also about sustainability, and sustainability has many different aspects. One is environmental, another is financial. The city needs to be financially solvent in order to to maintain the services and the environment that we all like. And finally, we talked a little bit about the difficulty of predicting how technology will affect us in the future.
Yeah.
If you go back 20 years, how many people predicted how pervasive Amazon would be? 20 years ago, we all wanted coax cable for Comcast. Now it's Wi-Fi, and so there's all these things that when you're trying to plan, you need to make sure that your zoning is flexible enough to be able to accommodate the changes in the way society works that you don't necessarily predict very accurately from our current perspective. I might add, if you ask people, about predicting the future, they usually have linear predictions, and you ask a person in 1910 about the future, they didn't know about computers, cell phones, all that sort of stuff. So that gives you an idea of the kinds of things you need to be able to plan to accommodate the unknown unknowns.
Very good, Alan. All right, thank you so much, Alan, and thank you to group 2. Let's hear from group 3. Give us your 2-minute summary of some of the high points. Who are we going to hear from?
Hey, Joanna, it's Andy. That would be Deborah from group 3.
All right, Deborah, you need any help getting unmuted? Where are you, Deborah? Here she is.
Sorry
there you
about
go.
that. I was unmuted. I don't know. I went over to get the list in another program, and I wonder if that caused me to be bounced out.
That's all
So,
right. Take it away.
So our group, of course, is talking about maintaining the open space.
Mhm.
And the emphasis is on maintaining the community character. The open space, people want open space within the city, within the downtown corridor area, and also around the periphery of Livermore. They want to preserve the ranching life and those nice country elements, and they don't want to lose those. They want it to be an inclusive area that is inviting to all people of different socioeconomic backgrounds. There's some mention about solar farms infringing on open space and a concern about that. There's an interest in preserving water capture, wasted water capture, and trying to have a better system for that to improve and look at water values as we move forward in Livermore. Improving communication and having communication reaching citizens in a timely manner so that policy changes are transparent and they receive those in a timely manner. There's a lot of discussion about transportation and integrating reduced car usage and bringing in other options for transportation throughout town, which includes a city program for bikes, some alternatives for city contracted cab use was one of the discussions that was brought up and had a lot of discussion. People did discuss parking to a degree. And as Mayor Marchand brought up, 85% of the citizens of Livermore in the last outreach plan made parking one of their #1 priorities and having enough parking. There was made mention of, again, inclusionary and integrated housing projects, meaning housing throughout the city so that large buildings aren't built and they are segregated socioeconomically into low income, and that we have an integrated process of diversity throughout the city, both socioeconomically and culturally. There was mention about increased usages of ADUs and ADVs, and some mention of the new SB 9 and 10 legislation and how that could be used in a positive way, provided that infrastructure is applied, as mentioned in meeting #2, to make sure that the proper amount of support is there for that kind of infill. And other key issues, again, planning ahead, conserving space and land and water resources is a high priority. Building strengths, building priorities around Livermore's strengths. And some of those strengths included partially their diversity already, their established diversity, their history, their open space, their protection of environment, preserving longstanding ranching environment, the wineries, and using some new technology coming out to help us do those things, achieve those things. Also preserving downtown businesses and making sure that businesses are vital and small businesses have opportunities in Livermore. Growing within our resource capabilities so that it's sustainable. And having an eye moving ahead towards growth. When Valley Link comes in, the population could increase to 105,000, and we need to be prepared for that and have housing available for that many people. And that pretty much sums it up.
Fantastic, Deborah. You really
Thanks, Deborah.
covered a lot. I appreciate that, and I appreciate all of you in group 3. Thank you. It sounds like a really productive discussion. Again, I think we can see some common themes emerging, but also some new ideas. All right, group 4. Who are we going to hear from?
I got to speak up last, so I got chosen.
All right, please go ahead.
Yeah, the thing that we were all able to agree on is that we wanted to be alive in 2045, so we could see all these changes. Although we had one dissenting member on that. The value of using these breakout sessions is obvious in that many themes come up, and so I'm not going to address those, but I'll try to focus on what's different about our particular group and what
Perfect.
we thought was important there.
Okay.
The common theme that we see is change is inevitable, and that we must be addressing that change and identifying what can be done and what cannot be done as far as change, because we simply can't do everything. There was a very valuable input in our group, and we all recognize the value of the agricultural surrounding land use in the community, and that needs to be integrated with many of the aspects of the growth that we're seeing now and we'll see in the future as well. That's one of our the biggest recurring themes that was addressed in our group. Another important idea was the idea of building consensus on all these different divisive issues between the different groups and different viewpoints as well, individuals and groups that applies to. And we think that the city council should be assigned the responsibility of building consensus rather than leaving it to individuals. It's frankly, that's one of their duties, we feel. The people already mentioned some of the groups about diversity and divisiveness, but we chose to look at that from the housing viewpoint. And we think that the differing ethnicities in Livermore do not have a common access to housing, and we need to address that in some fashion. So that's pretty much our conclusions.
All right. Excellent. Thank you so much for that. So our last, but absolutely equally important group is group 5.
That would be me presenting from group 5. That's Tracy.
Super. Take it away, Tracy.
Here's what I'm going to say, and that is many of the issues that have already been articulated obviously also came up for our group as well. What I think was really amazing, I'll summarize at a high level and dig into stuff that we also covered, and then some of the uniqueness of our discussion, which is we kind of had this consensus that there is a broad recognition of the breadth and width of our community. And that was even represented in our group itself. So when it came to defining the things that we liked, what we realized very quickly was that there was a need to make sure that we were even all talking from the same page when it came to saying things like, are we safe? My safe is different than your safe. So can we be curious about these differences and make sure they get articulated as part of the values of the plan? My small town is different than your small town. And all of the things that drive the discussions on inclusion and equity and access are facets of how those lenses get represented into these terms. So the more curious we are about representing them, the better we're going to be about creating that sort of resonance of now into the future. And I think that's really where we see the opportunity. We see the opportunity for commerce, transit, sustainability, of course, fiscal responsibility, and this very broad term of character of the city: arts, arts and culture, inclusion, and open space. So when we got to the vision for Livermore in 2045, we have this list that is huge because all of us represented a very wide gamut of experiences, everything from I'll be dead by then to I don't know if I'm going to be able to walk by then to what's the environment going to look like. So, you know, we realized that the framework in which the decisions are made are equally as important as the decisions themselves. We want a clean city, a transit friendly city, a walkable city, an open city, a welcoming city. And therefore, the basis of that is our discourse and our valuing of the science and the measure of these things underneath of them. And so also that also meant too that like some of these terms like open space, downtown, how big, where should it be put if it can't be put downtown? And some of the terms like, you know, when we think about transit and cars, you know, it really did come up that we can do a better job helping people get around town to create that small town that we want to feel as well. Going to the next sort of set of questions and ideas that we had, you know, there are underpinnings of transparency, of timelines being important, and moving too quick is something that really can alienate people. That participation and inclusion and welcoming need to underpin it, as does fiscal prudence, as does, you know, the notion that, you know, this is the one opportunity for participatory democracy to be expressed as broad and wide as possible across the city. So we need to make sure to account for that as we're going through this process. And then lastly, I think, you know, on question 4, what are the key issues? We've heard a lot of them already, and it serves to reiterate that, you know, we are bound by our concerns of the future. We are all concerned about traffic and cars. We are all concerned about the housing crisis. We are all concerned about the environment. We are all concerned about how sustainable our lives are. Some of the more interesting things that we put on that list are things like elderly space, like physical and mental health, like ensuring social services are accessible, like ensuring that equity is an underpinning, like ensuring that, you know, that transportation is both inside Livermore as well as inside to outside Livermore. And I think that was the last question. We only did 4, or was there one more? I can't remember.
No,
That was it. If there's anything from my group that I missed or misrepresented, folks, please chime in.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you, Group 5. That was great. Tracy kind of stole my thunder a little bit because I was going to point out some of the commonalities, but they took care of that for me. So thanks again, Tracy. And, you know, I will comment that I think one thing that's very cool that I really appreciate about Livermore, and that is unique from many of the other communities that I work with, is that there's such a strong sense in Livermore of both a connection to and appreciation of a past for many people, but also an openness, whether that's to newcomers or new ideas or to innovation or to changing and adapting. So I look forward to working with all of you on a general plan that kind of balances both of those really core pieces of what I see as, you know, Livermore's unique identity. And I know that we're a little bit over time. It's 8:45 now, and we were shooting to end by 8:30. So thank you to those of you who are hanging in there with us. There's 2 more important pieces that we want to talk about. They're both pretty quick. One is just to let you know about the next steps in this process. I've mentioned both of these already, but as a reminder, we have online activities on the website. Every slide in this PowerPoint has the web address, imaginelivermore2045.org. You can go there and spend more time with the same exercise that we did tonight, or you can send your friends there to give their input. We'd love to hear from you or them. That's going to be live through October 3rd. We're going to be at the Civic Center Library on Saturday in person for some face-to-face outreach. It's kind of similar to what you see in this picture here from when we were at the farmers market a couple of weeks ago, with posters and Post-it notes and an opportunity for you to add your words. That is Saturday from 12 to 3. And again, it's part of the Latinx and Hispanic Heritage Month celebration at the Civic Center Library. So look for us there. We'll be the ones with the bubble machine. And then in October, we're going to start up with the GPAC, the General Plan Advisory Committee. First, we have a meeting with them just to make sure that they're all set up and understand their role. And then we're going to have another meeting later in October to review a draft vision statement that reflects the input we heard here tonight and that we collected from all of our other sources. So the dates for those aren't set yet. That committee is actually still in the process of being formed. So we still have some details to nail down about that, but keep an eye on the website, imaginelivermore2045.org, for all of that information. And then very finally, you've already shared so much with us tonight, and we're again very, very grateful. But I also want to ask if you're willing to spend just a couple more minutes giving us your feedback on tonight's workshop. How did it go for you? What can we do better next time? We do want this process to be transparent and inclusive, and we want it to work well to capture a broad diversity of voices. So we are very interested in hearing from you on how we can do that and do that better. So the link is in the chat to that survey, or again, you can take a picture with your phone. You don't have to fill that out right this second, but we, again, would really love to hear your feedback on this workshop tonight and your ideas for going forward. That's our last slide. I will just take the opportunity to say again, thank you so much. Your participation means an enormous amount to us. We can't do this plan without you. So I hope that each one of you who's here tonight will remain involved, and I hope you'll all tell 10 of your friends and neighbors that this is happening and that we want to hear from them. Andy or anyone else, any other closing words?
I'd just like to thank everybody, but especially group 3. We got sucked out of our breakout room so fast. We had a great discussion. I really appreciate it.
All right, excellent. Thanks so much, everybody. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.